injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
I feel like 2024 is going to be magical.
FOF Live. Here we are again, as we are twice every week before every single series, presented by Berger and Hicks. Thanks to them, 3+ months or so of sponsoring our live streams throughout the entire season. Eli Sussman here. Double guests in here. We'll have our press box report later. We have a whole lot going on from both the Marlins and the Phillies side. We understand that we are competing live with a protest going on outside Lone Depot Park that started around the same time here. We're going to get some more details about what's going on there outside for those of you that are there or following along from home as Marlins return home at 10-29. Things have gone off the rails. But yeah, double guess. Alex Carr, he is our successful team correspondent every single season, sometimes multiple times a season, checks in from the Phillies. And of course, we have LMF, Loud Miami fan, and he's been on here as well. So how are both of you guys? How are you, Alex, first?
I'm doing lovely. I'm really, I'm very interested in the Loud Miami fan rebrand from Chase here. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what's going on. You used to be Loud Marlins fan, but the change, is this recent?
Came upon in December. It was actually a drunk lunch with a few of my friends at Chili's. When the Marlins...
Sorry, that is a crazy sentence that I was not expecting.
That's where all great ideas come from.
Yeah. The real reason behind it is I wanted to trademark Loud Marlins fan, and it was denied because of the Marlins and what it would represent in the sports world. So in our conversation, they said, you could still keep LMF if you just change it to Miami, and whoop. It hit me. So
Great.
Now that is trademarked, and we are Loud Miami fans. So
I thought it would have been out of shame from this year or disappointment from this year, but
you've seen my dance videos, man. I have no shame whatsoever. So we're good.
You. A drunk lunch at Chili's led to a trademark, and I love that. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you for Kevin. For following along with us. He is trapped covering an FIU versus Sam Houston State baseball game, not far away from the ballpark, but pulling double duty, prioritizing his boys, Florida International University Panthers. I don't blame him one bit. Thank you for him. And as I referenced just a few moments ago, there's this protest that I think was organized by the people, kind of the Cuban community, because most of the signs in Spanish, I hadn't actually gotten wind of this until a few hours ago, but that is, Isaac is taking a look at that right outside of Lone Depot Park. Obviously, this coming in reaction to the Arise trade, which is now almost a full week ago, but this is now the first time the Marlins have returned home since then. So I wanted to check in with you, Alex. First of all, your perspective as somebody that has witnessed firsthand that the Marlins they've played the Phillies very tough through the years. They've been pesky, and this is the year where for them to now barely half a year removed from meeting the Phillies in the postseason to be as far as possible from the playoffs. Did you see this coming at all for them to take such dramatic step back so quickly?
As much as I want to say no, I remember I think the last time that I was here, the last time that I was on the show, was right after the trade deadline last year. And I thought at the time, I was like, hey, these are great acquisitions for now. Jake Berger, Josh Bell, all those swell moves. But I remember being very cautiously, I was treading lightly around them because these are guys that, could just be flashes in the pan. Josh Bell has had probably more letdown seasons than positive ones over, the majority of his career. And Jake Berger, obviously the swings, I guess the whiff percentages and the O-swing percentages and things like that were not telling any lies, even though we haven't seen a ton from him this year, obviously just coming off the injured list. But those moves were risky at the time, I suppose. And now I think that you're basically seeing the worst case scenario, as it were. I mean, obviously the injuries to the pitching staff have been huge for this team. But I don't think the front office did enough to shore up the bullpen. I don't think they did enough to shore up the lineup. Again, I've said this time and time again, as a closeted Marlins fan myself, if this team would just spend some semblance of money, they'd be great. Nobody develops pitching like the Marlins do. Well, at least starting pitching. Nobody develops starting pitching like the Marlins do. It seems like every single year there's a new guy, right? Braxton Garrett kind of came out of nowhere last year. Not in that he was a first round pick, but it didn't seem like there was going to be much there. And then all of a sudden he takes this massive leap forward, right? I don't know. This does feel like worst case scenario and a little bit worse than they should be performing. But at the same time, the front office just has shown no willingness to help them. And it's unfortunate. It's really, really disappointing. But hopefully that means that it won't be too much of a task for the Phillies to overcome their boogeyman team here, as it were.
Yeah. On the other side, I want you to fill me in on the Phillies, because the last couple of years, they've ended up in an interesting place by the end of the season. But both those years, they got off to relatively slow starts. It took a while for them to get over 500, and things could not be going much better as of right now. They have the best record in all of baseball at this point in the season. They just won 1 million games in a row at home before that recently ended. But even so, why is it that they are off to? Is there anything that is tangibly better about this team than even the last couple, or are things just all the stars aligning?
I think the major difference maker is the difficulty of schedule thus far. I think the Phillies have had really difficult schedules early on for both of the last 2 years. It's just constant. They started the season against the Braves 2 years ago, started the season against the Rangers the year prior to that. It's like they always end up seeing, and started against the Braves this year as well. But they always end up seeing like really difficult clusters of teams early on, and then have an easier schedule at the back half of the year. This year, I don't know if it's the ease of the schedule or just that there's more parity in the schedule, and there's more parity among the power level of teams. But it's not like they've played bad teams. They've been playing, strong teams, or teams that you would expect to finish the season with above a 500 record that just aren't, winning at that rate just yet. But no, I think that's the number one thing. But I also think this team's chemistry is just not going to get beat. They have done such a good job of fostering such a positive and conducive and healthy clubhouse environment that these guys just love each other. They just want to see each other succeed, even if they're in a position battle, even if they're, trying to be the best hitter on the team. These guys absolutely love each other. And it helps that guys like Brandon Marsh and Alec Boehm, Chris Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, all these guys are coming out of the woodwork and having incredible years. But at the same time, it's the first time that Ranger Suarez started the season on time. This is the first time that, Alec Boehm has really started to utilize his pull side power. These are all things that I think any person that watches the Phillies knew could be a possibility, that are kind of now coming to fruition. And it's really cool. But similarly to how the Marlins are in a worst case scenario situation, the Phillies are kind of in a best case scenario situation. Everybody that, should be stepping up is stepping up and then some. And it's been really fun to watch.
Before we dive into this a little bit more, LMF, could you just touch on what the Marlins just went through in LA? Looking back at the last series, getting swept for, I think, the 5th time already in a series so far this season. All three of those games kind of relatively close at the very ends, but at the same time, not really. So any key takeaways that you had from watching Monday through Wednesday in LA from what you were able to actually watch? Because I know the first two were super late, that 10 p.m. starts, and then Wednesday was like that getaway day matinee. But whatever you were able to see, what were your takeaways from that?
My takeaways were this team started off hot in all three games. They grabbed the lead, I believe, in at least two of the three, if remembering not all the three. That's something that is a good sign that the chemistry is sticking together. Unfortunately, we did not get the pitching that we needed to back it up. And really, we did something the Braves couldn't do, right? If you take positives, Braves couldn't get a lead on the Dodgers. Marlins did it at least twice out of the three games. You look towards how they added on runs throughout the games as well. Unfortunately, that Dodgers lineup is just too good against mediocre pitching, and that's what we saw in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I need to pull up that stat. It is a total reversal from last year. Last year, the Marlins were great offensively at the very end of games and in high leverage situations. And this year, they're like a top 5 offense in the first inning. And then they're like bottom 2, bottom 3 in baseball every other inning of every game. So that continues to be a really weird quirk that they've had so far this year. They even scored first off of Yamamoto on the first pitch against Yamamoto. That was a fun moment where MLB Network was like carrying it live, and they joked that the Marlins were on no-hitter watch entering the game. And then on the very first pitch, Jazz takes them deep for that. And that was that was kind of like the high point of the entire series, man. This was another, we're going to get into it, I think, later, another Edward Cabrera injury again. And it's like the same shoulder issue that he's had now 3 times in the last calendar year, a shoulder impingement. So that caused him to leave that game early. This is actually a good suggestion. Yeah. Watch the first inning and then just do something else after that.
I do have something to add to the speaking about the Phillies before. They're not injured this year coming into it, and that's totally different. You brought up Ranger Suarez, that coming into this season, you have Harper from the beginning of the season, and really failure brings a team together. And last year, or if not just the World Series year, now that they're all healthy, they did lose prematurely to at home, we'll say, to Arizona, and that brought them closer together, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Phillies didn't make many moves this offseason either. They just kept the same team.
Not inherently. I think that to your point, this team was already pretty much as close as you can get. And I'm sure the failure has done nothing but bring them closer. But in terms of their moves this offseason, it was less, I don't know. It's hard to make moves for the Phillies if you are the, president of baseball operations of this team. It is a very complete roster. They have, a good chunk of depth. A lot of what they did was kind of shore up that depth. They acquired a metric ton of starting pitching depth that they've just stashed at AAA. Spencer Turnbull being one of those guys that they expected to just, maybe stash in AAA for a time, who then came out of the woodwork and is, absolutely shoving, who they've had to relegate to the bullpen because they just don't have the space, in the rotation for him. But yeah, it was more, that you have Andrew Painter coming back next year. That you have Mick Abel knocking on the door. That you have guys like Michael Mercado, who they've converted into a starter and is magically becoming just, another really possibly dependable arm that they can kind of, bring up towards the end of the year when rosters expand. Orion Kerkering was already going to be a big, piece of this bullpen. And I think their mentality was, well, if we have any holes to plug, we'll plug them at the deadline. But there really wasn't a lot to do. And much to the chagrin of the Philadelphia fan base, because they always just want a shiny new toy to play with. And they got that kind of in Whit Merrifield, a guy that they, the Phillies didn't necessarily need. But given their, the whiffs that they were getting off the bench in the playoffs, I think that was kind of their mentality there. But Cody Clemens has also come up in Trey Turner's absence and is just absolutely walloping the baseball when he gets an opportunity. So I don't know. I think having the environment in the clubhouse that the Phillies have is just what makes everybody that comes up want to match that level of success, want to match that level of fun, want to match that level of excitement. And so you see guys like Cody Clemens come up and in 11 at bats, they sock 2 home runs, right? It's a pretty cool team to watch right now.
Well, you transitioned pretty well to something that I wanted to bring up about how you got these guys knocking on the door in the minors that maybe don't have roles right now and maybe would be better off being flipped for more new toys to help push you guys over the top. So with the Marlins already trading Luis Ariz, is there anybody that you're looking at on this Marlins roster over these next couple of months that you think could make sense to fit in, plug whatever holes or just shore up whatever areas of the Phillies roster could use an extra boost as the season goes on?
As much as I would love to target any of the Marlins starting pitching, the Phillies already have 2 really, really strong left-handed options out of the rotation and also are just crowded in that respect anyway. The one guy that I think makes a lot of sense, I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately. As much as I would love to say Brian De La Cruz, I think Brian De La Cruz is very, very good. I would love to, for the Phillies to go out and acquire a guy that does have options, which Brian De La Cruz does. But the one guy that I've had my eye on a little bit is Jesus Sanchez. And listen, the Phillies definitely need somebody a little bit more contact prone off the bench. They also need somebody with options. Right now, they do not have any bench flexibility whatsoever, really. So it doesn't really make a ton of sense inherently, but they do need a left-handed hitter off the bench, preferably one that plays corner outfield spaces or even, shores up some infield spots. They kind of have that in Cody Clemens, but I do think they're going to make some sort of move for a left-handed hitter of some respect to kind of shore up that area for them, or maybe even platoon with somebody that's struggling. You look at Nick Castellanos right now, not really giving you a lot at the plate. Maybe if you shift him to more of a platoon role down the stretch, you have a bit of a better chance at hitting some of those tough righties that they'll see in the postseason. The other guy that I wish I could say I want the Phillies to target would be obviously Tanner Scott. Arguably the best reliever in baseball last season, or one of the top 5. He's just lights out when he's on. I'm sure. I love Isaac, but I would love for the Phillies to be able to target a guy like that. Unfortunately, they already have 3 lefties in the pen. And 2 of those lefties sometimes struggle to throw strikes. So I don't think adding a 4th lefty that struggles to throw strikes would be the smartest move to make. But yeah, there's definitely some inroads there. I think particularly the Phillies will look at maybe a smaller deal with the Marlins, if anything. Nothing blockbuster worthy. But there's some players on the fringes that are definitely going to be, worth looking at. And boy, oh boy, I think there's going to be a lot for the Marlins to deal from, come the end of July. So that's going to be pretty crazy.
Well, LMF, what do you think about the topic of Jesus Sanchez? I know you've had your battles with him, and you're at times you've been very low on him. And to this point, he's not actually having a very good season. After all the progress he made last year, he has regressed in more ways than one. I don't know if you actually, in case you didn't notice, Alex, he was benched pretty blatantly.
I did
a week and a half ago, and even still, he's a bizarre player. So where do you stand with him right now, LMF? Now that he's been playing a lot for this team in the absence of Avi.
I think the problem is he doesn't get enough playing time right now. I would love for him to have been the starting right fielder game after game after game to really see, no matter what type of pitcher he's against, to see if he can perform. It's the inconsistent play that really hurts these players. I think the Marlins have had, in my eyes, multiple different lineups throughout the week, whether switching a player from 2 to 6, 5 to 4, doesn't really matter. Keep them and let them get a repetitive ball going. But my thoughts on Jesus Sanchez, I'd be really happy for him to get off this Marlins team to a place like Philadelphia where that right field wall is made for home runs. And he hits when he hits with power. It would be beautiful to see him get some triple deckers at Citizens Bank Ballpark. Not for you guys, but, it'd be nice for him. I wish him the best. I just was always a DLC guy. And you mentioned him. He'd be perfect as well. DLC has, 3 years left? He's going into ARB next season, so he's relatively cheap. Not that the Phillies matter, but what can they give us in return is the question. You mentioned some prospects in there who are kind of blocked from coming up. Might not be a bad move. I see some comments like from JP or PJ, I'm sorry, stating you don't trade in your division. Right now, man, you get what you can get as best as you can get it. And if that means interdivision trades, you have to do it.
I don't think that's going to stop him. I also, at this point, I completely agree with you, by the way. When you have a guy like Jesus Sanchez, that this is kind of a make or break year for him, he is out of options, and probably, come next year, if he doesn't pick up the bat, he's probably out of a job. And so, I would really, put him in the field as much as I can right now, try and showcase something from him in order to receive some sort of value. But you really do have to, play these guys like what they're doing with Vidal Brujan. Like, I feel like, they are trying to see what they have in some of these guys. And it doesn't seem like they're always, it seems like Skip Schumacher is still trying to send out lineups to win the game instead of trying to send out lineups of guys that, really need to showcase something in order to kind of build some value, as it were. So I don't know. It's going to be a really interesting storyline to watch, but the Marlins definitely have a lot to deal from. Whether or not they deal from, the guys that they should probably deal from is going to be the big question. So it's going to be a fun storyline to watch.
You failed to mention Jazz. Is that not a player you guys would target?
I just think that the return that Jazz would require on top of the fact that the Phillies, I love Jazz. Let me state that in plain terms. I think Jazz is one of the most exciting people to watch in all of baseball, especially when he's healthy. I think Jazz is a really big personality that you have. And honestly, I think the Marlins did a great job building around Jazz's personality this year. I think they built a clubhouse that does feel like it could be pretty tight-knit. Tim Anderson's a great guy. Like, Tim Anderson, Jazz, they both feel like they'd mesh really well. Jake Berger, I think he's kind of taken on a more of a veteran captain's role a little bit more here. Obviously, guys like Brian De La Cruz, I don't know a ton about his personality, nor do I know a ton about a lot of these guys' personalities. But it feels like the personality of that clubhouse is also like, it has a really good identity. It has they know who they are, right? They know they're scrappy. They know that they're going to fight for wins. They know that they're going to, all that stuff. I think Jazz is too big of a personality to ingratiate into a clubhouse that already has such a strong identity. And the last thing that I think you want is to bring in a guy that isn't necessarily going to directly mesh with what you have going on. That being said, I don't know, maybe Jazz would get along really well with a lot of the guys in the Phillies clubhouse, but they've been enemies for, a few years now. I think that's kind of a move that you make in the off season and not at the trade deadline where, you're kind of messing with your clubhouse chemistry immediately and you don't really have a preseason to ingratiate these guys together. But it would be nice. There's just nowhere for him to play too regularly. So
right,
that would be hard.
Yep.
Yeah. It is. He's in a fascinating situation. I put out a note on Twitter that the knock on him has been his durability, and right now he's in the middle of his longest streak of actually starting every single game.
Is that true?
Yeah.
How about that?
This is going to be his 29th. So assuming tomorrow is going to be almost certainly tomorrow will be his 30th. That was going to set a new personal record for him. And part of that is, as LMF probably remembers, Don Mattingly did not enjoy playing him against lefties. And it took a while for him to actually, and he still has not, that's another tangent about how he still has not produced all that well against lefties.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the big disconnect between how Jazz views himself as like this all-star caliber player versus how everybody else is like, you're an automatic out against lefties. That it drags down his overall offensive numbers. But that is, that's what makes him a tricky personality. It's because really all the potential he has, but then the production just it's been all right. It hasn't been great, honestly, for a couple of years now.
I do feel like if you put him on a ship that doesn't constantly feel like it's sinking, not to be too brutal to Miami here, but I feel like if you put him in a situation where he is winning, it's why I feel like I don't think he will. I don't think Braves fans would be very kind to him, but I do think that he would play very well on a team like the Braves. A team that that they are going to just continue winning. He has a ton of protection in a lineup like that. You don't really have to worry about things going sour. I think that is where he is really meant to play. Not necessarily Atlanta, but a place with winning culture, a place where, the front office is going to supply you with weapons and you feel confident all the time that you are, presenting the best version of your club. Well, there you go. Is that true? Is Acuna actually his favorite player?
I think he's actually closer to Michael Harris II.
That makes a lot of sense
going on. Yeah.
And I feel like that would be really fun to see the two of them roam in the outfield together. It just feels like Miami's not the place for him. And it's not a hitter's park either. Go ahead. Sorry.
I beg to differ regarding Jazz in Atlanta because he loves going to Atlanta. He loves performing in front of their fans. He was there, I think, for their World Series run. He was there at every game being showcased on MLB TV. Walking around, loving the crowd, the energy that they give. Not that your Phillies don't give a huge energy in their own. It's just Atlanta's a Southern boy would be a great fit for that team.
That fan base I know is just very. They have very opinionated fans, and so I'm just not sure if acquiring a division rival player would be like, oh yeah, that's great, or oh no, we don't want this guy. He's been terrible on a terrible team,
and
things like that.
He is a great fit for what can be a Miami culture if they actually built the team to win. He's flashy.
Could not agree more.
The Jimmy Butler for the Heat, or he could be the Dwayne Wade flashiness for this team if they knew how to market it, which we could get into, which we're not, or if they actually really honed into building it around him, a winning team, he would be fine down here. But we'll see if he goes and plays in Seattle. That's a place that's been mentioned a bunch. I've seen in real media. And, I see there's a Ken Griffey Jr. comment from DeMar in the chat here that can be a spot for him.
That would be a really fun place for him to
player
land.
of all time.
That'd be a fun place for him to land for sure.
Okay. Yeah, we got to speed things along, hop into our press box report on the other side of the break. But one thing we've been doing consistently on these streams this year is flipped fish, where we take a player that was formerly with the Marlins and with the opposing team at some point during their careers. And based on a couple hints from their baseball reference page, try to figure out who they are. And this one, I would say it's a relatively
what in the world?
I'd say it's harder than average when you look at the contrast. A 261 career hitter that was somehow 3.5 wins below replacement level during their career, played for
I know
10 or 11 seasons from 2004 to 2014. A lefty hitter. Save it for about 35 seconds. We'll go to our break. On the other side, we'll do the reveal. We'll hear from Alex Krutchik at the ballpark. We'll talk more about this series and do our predictions. So please, everybody, stick with us.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
All right. enlighten us, Alex. Who is this?
Okay, well, I thought I knew who this was. My original guess was going to be Justin Bohr, but then I realized that's probably about 10 years too late. Too late. So let me think a little bit harder. As a third baseman, first baseman,
I have the
their
answer.
debut was in 2004. Their last game was 2014. This is gonna kill me. All right, I'll let somebody else have it.
I'm gonna guess here, Greg Dobbs, even though it's put in the chat.
Oh, it's gotta be Greg Dobbs. It's gotta be Greg Dobbs.
Alex Carver got it as well.
It's gotta be Greg Dobbs. That's why pinch hitter is listed as positions, because that's what Greg Dobbs was good at. Oh, I can't believe that. I think I saw first game instead of last game in 2014, but that does not make any sense because he was born in 78. So, oh well, couldn't get it this time.
Really quickly, because Alex Carver did buzz in on this, I wanted to plug this giveaway that he's doing on his Twitter account. As we get to the 28th anniversary of Al Leiter's no-hitter, he's giving away an unripped ticket stub autographed by Al Leiter from that game. You can find that on his Twitter account. You have a couple more hours to get involved with that before we select a winner for that.
Whoa, that's really cool.
Yeah, please take him up on that opportunity.
Yeah, don't give it to me; it'll end up being sold.
So, Mr. Krushik, are you able to talk, or is the national anthem going on simultaneously?
I'm not sure. Right now, we're fine. It's Fleet Week in Miami, so they've got the. It looks like the Navy is out there right now, but they're set up in center field, which is where the national anthem is always sung. And they've got a few microphone stands already in front of them. I think right now it's just a photo op, though. I think they're just giving them photos before. Usually the anthem is 8 minutes before scheduled first pitch. So I don't know. So for now, we'll push through it and see if they actually sing or not. It doesn't seem like right now they're going to.
And
thank you for their service. Thank you for your service.
Yes, I'm happy that you got your phone back. A new phone. His phone disappeared for like the last 3 days, and he had to replace it right there, which made communication a little bit challenging. But thank you.
We're back.
Very happy that worked out for you. Doubling up on Alex's here. What have you been able to gather from a few hundred feet away about the protest that is happening outside of Lone Depot Park right now?
It seems like it's a little bit small, but their hearts are in the right places. It's definitely spirited. I like the idea. I do think that fans should voice their opinions more, just because I think that the most dangerous thing for a market is not angry fans. It is indifferent fans. And so I don't necessarily think that a protest to tell Bruce Sherman to spend more money is what's going to work. But I do love that they're doing it, just because it shows that people still care, right? It was kind of like the Avi Garcia thing from earlier in the year, right? Like, I'm personally, I don't boo. Even when I was a fan without credentials, I never booed. And I felt bad for Avi, but I still liked that fans still cared enough to boo. So I think it's a cool thing that they're doing down there. The only gripe that I have is they've got Pablo Lopez and Luis Arraez right next to each other on that sign. But Arraez doesn't happen unless you trade away Pablo Lopez. And when they traded Pablo Lopez, it was very well known that it was a win now. That's not really a fire sale move. It's kind of one of those things where, like, one of these names doesn't really belong here. But I still like the spirit of it. And I'm just now noticing that sign on the right has a chicken with all of its feathers off. I think that's great imagery.
Yeah. So some interesting, I guess, far too little too late, but this weekend, Braxton Garrett already locked in for Sunday. And is your understanding that Luzardo comes off the IL tomorrow and he starts tomorrow?
Yeah, we've the people that we've spoken to, they're not allowed to say anything yet, but everyone knows that it's Luzardo. They just have to make the corresponding move, send someone down, move them elsewhere. But it'll be Luzardo tomorrow, and then Braxton on Sunday. So it's nice to see that Luzardo, fingers crossed, hasn't had a setback at all. I feel like we've seen it too many times this year and even last year with Sandy. where something bad happens and then you think that you're out of the woods, and then turns out they need Tommy John. So it was nice that Luzardo was actually on the IL for just what I think was the minimum. Was he on the IL for just the minimum 15 days, Eli? It was close.
It's a little bit more. It was closer to 20, something like that.
Okay. But it was still great that he was close to the minimum and he's back. And I really hope that he comes out of tomorrow's start, if he's the starter, comes out of tomorrow's start feeling good and also looking good, because he hasn't been pitching the way that we all know that he can. And hopefully these 3 weeks off have been good for him.
These are the other injury updates from prior to the game. AJ Puck, I thought he'd be back for this series. I got to mute Krutchik right there. He's got a lot of PA volume coming through. I thought AJ Puck might be available in this series, but it turns out they bumped him up to Jacksonville for a couple more outings. So I guess that's Monday, maybe, for Puck that'll be back. And the most significant update in here was Dylan Head, where I got a lot of questions over like the last few days about what the hell is happening with Dylan Head, the guy that was the headliner of the Arise trade, who still has not played for them the first week. And apparently they were keeping this injury on the down low, that he has an adductor strain. So we'll see. They're calling it day-to-day, and I don't think he's on the IL in Jupiter, but that is naturally that is raising some questions about why they rushed this trade to happen when they did, if he was dealing with an injury at the time of the trade and being such an important piece of it. But yeah, that's an interesting wrinkle in there as we bring Krutchik's volume back in here. Yeah, so
can you repeat that one more time? It seems like I was wrong. There's no anthem, but they are inducting people into. I'm not privy on how this stuff works. I think what is happening now is some of these naval people are being inducted into the Navy. I could be totally wrong. That seems to be what's happening. Can you repeat your question one more time?
they're like, as part of Fleet Week, right? That's going on. Yeah, they're bringing people into the Navy. Or they're like honoring people?
I guess they were. This can sound bad, but the only parallel I know to this is like with like fraternities, where you're pledged at first and then you get inducted to the real fraternity. I think that's what this is. I could be wrong. I should have done more research. I didn't know I would have to provide commentary.
They're being sworn in, is what's happening. Sworn in would be the right term.
Interesting.
Very cool. The Marlins doing the thing.
It's very cool. Thank you for your service and support the troops.
Yeah. I just want to get your take on the fact that Dylan Head, who in most people's opinions was like the top prospect that they got in the Arise trade, shows up as part of this trade and immediately has an injury there. Doesn't that make you like question the timing of it a little bit, that they brought him over without being like fully sure that he was ready to go and actually take the field for them?
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that the Marlins got a player with a secret injury from the San Diego Padres. Who was it back in was it Jared Cozart, like back in the mid 2010s?
It was Colin Ray. It was Colin Ray in the.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
When did they end up reversing that trade?
They ended up reversing part of the trade. That's how they initially sent Luis Castillo, the current Mariner guy. They originally traded him as part of that bundle. It was like a 6-player trade, and they reversed the Colin Ray part and the Luis Castillo part. And so they just got rid of Castillo like 6 months later in a trade to the Reds. But
that was very smart of them. Very astute.
And as long ago as that was, it was the same GM in San Diego. It was still in the AJ Preller era right there. So it does. What made the Colin Ray trade even crazier is that he pitched in a major league game for the Marlins, got hurt worse in that game, and then they were still through Major League Baseball. They still kind of agreed to reverse part of that. So not quite that extreme in this case, though. Yeah. Anything else, Krutchik, from Lone Depot Park?
Yeah, it's extreme. Sorry, Eli.
Anything else that you want to give us from the ballpark before we check out?
Edward Cabrera received injections a couple days ago, according to Skip Schumacher. He said he's fine. That was the actual word he used. He started off by saying he feels fine, and then he ended his answer by saying he feels good. So this also hopefully is just one of those minimum IL stints, or at least close to the minimum. I did ask him, like, do you think, is there anything in his delivery, in his mechanics, or in his workout regimen that could be causing this recurrent issue? Because it's the third time that he's gone on the IL for this exact injury in the last 12 months. He admitted, Skip, that it's one of his weaknesses that he can't really identify certain things in a pitcher's mechanics, which makes sense. He was a career outfielder. And so he couldn't really give me an answer. He just said that he hasn't seen anything. He also kind of alluded to the fact that some guys' bodies are just different. So couldn't really find much through there. But it sounds like it's not going to be a long-term thing. But we'll see.
Okay, we'll let Krutchik get down. He still has a few minutes to get down to the field and get sworn in himself. So we'll give Krutchik a few minutes to do that as he moves on to the Navy, covering his final game for Fish on First before moving on to his new career over there. Thank you, Krutchik. In all seriousness, check out his coverage on Twitter and his recap, of course, on our site, fishonfirst.com right there. Yeah, he did bring up Edward Cabrera, something that we should probably touch on because same injury that he's had 2 previous times in the last year with that shoulder impingement. And if it is the same as the previous time, it's basically a full month until he comes back as a fully stretched out starter. They shut you down for a few days and then pretty much starts his throwing progression from a pretty low level and just builds up again. LMF, well, where are you with Cabrera at this point? I mean, at this point, there's kind of a void in the rotation for him to fill whenever he's ready. But at the same time, the results have been inconsistent again when he's healthy. And the walks just never seem to go away for more than 1 or 2 starts at a time.
The problem with Cabrera is he's out of options. And he can pitch. He can eat up innings. But his performance on the field has regressed. Or stayed the same, where he's just walking and walking and walking. The batters. I mean, he walked the bases loaded, and then he decided to give up a grand slam. Like, come on, man. They say it's in his head, but is it in his head? Is it a physical thing with the injury? We had an opportunity to trade him. You saw the backlash, we'll call it, from the fan base when it was posted online, that potential Pirates trade. That was value at the time. You wonder what can you get back for him. I'd say maybe, as Joe Fasaro said in one of his tweets, let's see how he does with another team, get something back, and hope he can have a good career. Look, no matter how the players perform, you always root for them. They're people, they're human. They want to achieve greatness. You want them to. And if it's just time to end your tenure with the team, that's where I am. Ship him out, get some value back, if he has any.
Right.
Yeah.
They in case you hadn't saw this, Alex, prior to the season, one of the Pirates beat writers, he filed a draft.
Saw it.
You did.
I saw it.
A draft about how they had a trade done, essentially, and he was even naming a few of the players in it. And then he said, well, it should not have gone out there. That was just the draft. That was just staying ready. But that just shows you how close they were to potentially moving him. And it was a polarizing topic because certainly there was value that was lower than perhaps it would have been slightly earlier in his career when there were still seemingly higher hopes for what he'd become. And yet it still would have been something, as a couple different position players that they could have at least built something upon. And now, it's a tricky spot when you're out of options and you're not performing and you have repeated injuries. Yeah, there's only so much time for him to potentially build up his value before the deadline. And it is really frustrating. Where are you on what hopes you still have of what he could become, do you think, if he actually is able to get back on the field relatively soon?
It really is. It's very interesting because, like I was mentioning before, nobody develops starting pitching like the Marlins. You are really going to be hard pressed. Maybe Cleveland, but you're going to be hard pressed to find a team that does this better and figures out guys better than Miami does, and they just haven't seemed to been able to crack the Edward Cabrera case yet, as it were. It's difficult because it really does seem like it's just a command thing. It does seem, the stuff is fantastic, as you can see in front of you. Baseball Savant seems to think that Edward Cabrera is pretty good. And yet, for whatever reason, the walks just are the thing that are really hurting him the most. It does seem, I think Alex just brought it up. It does kind of seem like something mechanical could change here. That is what stands out to me most. It feels like, if he is really having trouble with one particular part of his game, something is, and especially if he's having recurring injury issues in the same arm, same shoulder, it feels like something's probably not as streamlined as it should be. And I do think that if the Marlins do end up moving on from Cabrera, you better believe a team like, like Cleveland, like Tampa Bay, like, Cincinnati will probably take that flyer, because the stuff is undeniable. It really is. I know that whenever the Phillies go to oppose Edward Cabrera on the mound, I'm always, pretty certain that he's going to, throw a really solid game. So, and that might just be the Phillies' luck, or it might just be, Edward Cabrera is that good. But yeah, feels like the stuff is undeniable. Just kind of got to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah. We will look at tonight's lineups for the series opener between the Phillies and the Marlins right here. As is always the case with the Marlins, a lot more red on the other side of the team that they're going up against. LMF, I know you're happy to see Dane in the lineup and batting leadoff.
Oh, cool.
Here. Yeah, and let me get that shirt up there for people to see as well. The great Dane Myers shirt they've had here. Got called up just a few weeks ago, and now it seems like what they're doing here is against lefties, Dane is going to bat leadoff, and against righties, Jazz bats leadoff as well. But yeah, still a pretty strict platoon going on here. So why don't you talk to us not only about Dane, but also about like DLC? He was like one of the only hitters that did well this past series, and now he's basically leading the team in every offensive category. You think he's, at this point, isn't he like the front runner to be their all-star representative at this point?
100%. I mean, he led the team last year in RBIs. None of this is new. The arguments about his defensive play may still be there. I think he's gotten a little bit better. He hasn't had too many errors in the outfield this season. A lot of times he is the DH, though. You got to be happy for De La Cruz. He's matured more year over year. 15 home runs, 19 home runs. I projected him at 25 to 30 this year. He's exceeding that, I think, on target to hit 33. He's going to be a force. And, I mean, I compared him a little bit to Randy Arozarena. I know totally different players, but if you put their numbers against each other, they're kind of there minus the steals. I mean, I think he has a stolen base this year. He is going to be the Marlins representative. You'd expect Jazz to be. Jazz will get votes, and it's a fan vote that counts, right? But De La Cruz, if we could start promoting and marketing him right, he could be the representative for sure. Regarding Dane Myers, Dane's a good kid. Yeah, very friendly. He started off in a little bit slow in the minors after the letdown of not making the open day roster. I speak to him frequently. He's keeping his head up. Maybe a little bit mental there, but he's excited to be here. And really, he's performing great. I think he's gotten a hit in every game he's been up, if not a pinch hit and an RBI. So nice to have him back in the lineup. I don't think he played at all. If not, he came in late in any of those games when I was sleeping. But he didn't start at all in L.A. Guy like Bell, you need him to heat up. Jake Berger's back. He did get a single, I want to say, in the last game, so did get a hit on that last series. It'd be nice. I have him as my MVP, which we'll get into later, but I think he's going to be a difference maker in that lineup and bring the energy. That's where I am with all the Marlins. And who's that catcher? You have Christian Bethancourt. I think he got a couple hits. Maybe he will continue that. They have him batting 8th today. Wonderful. Yay.
It is incredible statistically how unproductive Marlins catchers were last year and how they somehow took
Why
a
did they
significant
think,
step back this year.
What made them think Christian Bethancourt was the answer is my question. What made them think that?
It has to be the familiarity. I hate that word. With Peter Bendix. He never really played for Cleveland. He was just picked up by Cleveland. And then we traded cash considerations for him. Honestly, they should have went after Joey Bart. I still think that. It's not going to happen, but it is what it is at this point. And you know what? He's contributing to our future top draft pick.
So anything from the Phillies side that you should draw our attention to, Alex? Is this kind of what you expected, or anything notable about it?
I feel like I always am going to go back and forth. Listen, when the Phillies are in a bit of a place right now where you really don't want to sit some of your better lefty bats against left-handed pitching. However, in a scenario like today, when you're facing a starting pitcher with such stark righty versus lefty splits, it feels like you should load the lineup with righties. And I think that that's what the Phillies have mostly done when it comes to facing guys like Nick Lodolo, when it comes to facing guys like, any lefty that has really stark splits, they have loaded the lineup with righties. And so no different today. Brandon Marsh and Bryson Stott. Bryson Stott's actually started to hit the ball a lot better of late. Brandon Marsh has kind of been tearing it up all year. He's really breaking out in a big way this season. But yeah, I think that that 5 through 8, or even, the 5 through 9 holes really are going to be what either win or lose the Phillies this game. It has been a rough start to the year for Nick Castellanos, as if you couldn't tell by all that blue. Looks like he belongs on the opposite side of this graph rather than this side, but, c'est la vie. Whit Merrifield has actually been a lot better of late. Started the season, I think, like 1 for 20, and now is, kind of back up where you would expect a Whit Merrifield type player to be. Edmundo Sosa has had a great start to the year as well in his very limited time. He's seen a lot more of an increase of time with Trey Turner on the IL. And Christian Pache, he is a bit of a redundancy when it comes to what Johan Rojas gives you, but you look at that exit velocity average there, and 92.3 sure don't seem that bad. Obviously not a qualified hitter, but this is a guy that with a little bit more time on the field is starting to show some flashes of the top prospect that he used to be. That Phillies outfield defense today is not going to be letting a lot of balls drop. That is for sure when you have two elite gloves like Johan Rojas and Christian Pache roaming the corner and center field. But these top 4 hitters in the lineup have just been doing incredible things all year. I think Marlins fans are familiar enough with them at this point. But Alec Boehm is the Phillies leader in WAR right now, which is unexpected, but very much appreciated. And he's I think he's like a top 6 or 7 player in baseball right now in WAR, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Boehm also killed Andrew Nardi, so you hope they get to face off this series at some point, and he strike him out and get his head back in the game, because Nardi has not been the same since that Grand Slam.
You would hope that. I might not hope that, but.
So without further ado, we will hop into prediction time right here. First, we'll I should ask for Krutchik to give his prediction live during that, but we got Daniel Rodriguez checking in from, well, he'll tell you where he is.
What's up? I wish I could be there. Shout out to Alex Carr. I'm here at the 2024 ACC Outdoor Championships to give my prediction for this series. Quick one, Phillies take 2 out of 3. MVP Bryce Harper has 2 home runs this series. Back to you, Eli.
He's in Georgia. He's on like Georgia Tech for some sort of a track meet with the University of Miami over there. So he's taking Phillies win 2 out of 3, MVP Bryce Harper. I should have that's a very popular prediction among our super subs right there.
Sure.
All season long for people. In case you're not aware by now, we keep track of your predictions on our leaderboard on our site. That is our current leader right now, but it's a tenuous lead, only 1 point up on everybody else at this point in the season so far. And overall, it's still wide open. This is a really low scoring year because nobody in their worst nightmares could have envisioned the Marlins winning only one series through like the first quarter of the season. So it's been low scoring overall. There's still a lot of chances to catch up, to close those gaps, and even for people to start on their own if they haven't already. So aside from being on our streams, if you are a super sub, you get to participate in these every single series in our Discord or on our site as well, fishonfirst.com/subscriptions, in order to hop in and join on the prediction time fun, where picking against the Marlins and even going through this suffering is worth it on the other ends because it gets you points in the process right here. So let's get up this background that we got specifically for the Phillies series. Let's get our background music popping for prediction time as well.
We better be getting an Eli Sussman. This is prediction time.
This is prediction time.
Thank you very much. Need that.
We'll go to you first, LMF, on this one. Your prediction, how many wins for the Marlins and your MVP?
It is the matchup of the century, of the season. It is the Miami Marlins versus the Philadelphia Phillies for the first time since the Phillies beat Miami 2-0 in the playoffs. The beauty of this is last season, the Marlins won the season record versus the Phillies, and I believe they're going to start off going 2-1 again with the return of Jesus Luzardo and the Braxton Garrett movement starting this weekend. Marlins go 2-1. We shock the nation, shock the world. And my MVP is Jake Burger.
I'll have to veer on the other side of that. I have the Phillies winning 2 out of 3 in this series. Alex Carr broke it down pretty well. Alec Bohm exceeding expectations this year, one of the most valuable players in all of baseball, and I think he keeps it going with a really productive series to help the Phillies take 2 out of 3. So he's going to be my MVP of this series. Now let's hear from you, Alex.
I wish I had the energy that LMF has, but I think that it's difficult to predict any other outcome than the Phillies winning this series. I think the difficulty lies in whether you say they sweep or they win the series. Just because 3 lefties coming up against a lineup that has a bunch of right-handed hitters that have just been doing a lot of work against tougher lefties. So I think it's probably, I'm going to conservatively say Phillies win 2 out of 3, and I'll give Alec Bohm the MVP. Actually, you know what? Just for the sake of being different, I think JT Realmuto comes out of the gate pretty. I think this is his heat up series. He's back at his old park, and I think facing 3 lefties is going to give him a bit of an opportunity, fresh off a rest day, to slug a little bit. So I'll say JT Realmuto is my series MVP.
All right. Just 10 minutes away from first pitch between the Marlins and Phillies right here. LMF, Alex Carr, Eli Sussman with you for this series preview. Yeah, it's really interesting times that we're going through right here, but we'll be back again on Monday for the start of that Tiger series. In between, we'll have our State of the Fish Twitter space on Sunday night, so be sure to join us for that. Yeah, I'm still full speed ahead with coverage that we do on fishonfirst.com. So follow along with us every step of the way leading up to the trade deadline, because I know that's top of mind for everybody. But even beyond that and in between, we have a whole lot stored up for you guys to keep you entertained, keep you informed, and make it all worthwhile to go through this very temporary suffering as a Marlins fan.
Very temporary.
Yeah. Have a great weekend, everybody. As always, go fish.